All right, so my friends, welcome. Set review, complete style, Wilds of Eldraine, every card, limited, constructed, all the awards you know and love. We did white, blue, black, red, and green. You missed those, we're on YouTube, go watch them. Now it's time to do the multicolored section. It's a very, very exciting section. There's a lot of cool gold cards here. And our first ever look at dual colored adventure cards, too. Pretty cool, right? But first, want to remind y'all, hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube. Helps out a ton. Appreciate the support. Thanks so much in advance, because I trust it. I know you're going to do it. All right, let's go. Multicolored cards, jumping right in with one of the three witches. So, storyline here, I'm out of Vorthos, but the three witches did some stuff, and they put the plane to sleep to stop the Phyrexians. I don't know. Amy and Zbex help you out with that one, or Gina, or whoever else does the story side of stuff. It's not really me, but go look it up on your own. We got Agatha all along here of the Vile Cauldron. Red-green for a 1/1. Legendary Human Warlock. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, or X is Agatha's power. This effect cannot reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. Okay, so base level, all your activated abilities cost 1 less. 6 mana. Other creatures you control get +1 trample and haste until end of turn. So, definitely feels like a, not a combo-y card necessarily because you can't go below 0, but a card that needs other cards to be good. I'm sure there are a lot of weird, interesting combo cards. Does play very well with Bard class, obviously, being a red-green legend that makes Bard class easier to use. She does reduce herself as well, so it is 5 mana actually to pump the team. This is a weird card. Weird build around. Honestly, it feels kind of Commander adjacent, where it's just like this weird, awkward build around. For constructed play, I don't think that this is that relevant, honestly, barring Bard class being relevant. But aside from that, I don't know, honestly. I'm sorry, it's only creature cost. I apologize. But hi, I'm Jim. Welcome to the set review. So, does not reduce the cost of Bard class. It's still similar there otherwise. But yeah, kind of a weird card. You really gotta think about and parse every activated ability legal in the format you want to play her in, which is tough. But this card's too. I'm too dumb for this card. All right, what do you want from me? All right, what can I do? For limited, this card's pretty good though because 5 mana, you pump the squad and give trample is reasonable, and I'm sure there are other abilities you can use as well. But yeah, weird build around. Feels like a commander card. That's what I got. What are you gonna do? Moving on to a much easier card in Ash Ketchum, Party Catcher. Boros 2-drop, 2/2 haste for 2. This is the Celebration Signpost Uncommon. It's important to note if you're new to Limited Magic or not paying attention. Every set basically has an uncommon for each color pair that is called I can't talk today. A Signpost Uncommon, meaning it is a card that kind of tells you what the color combination is all about. So in this set, the Boros combination is all about Celebration, which is a mechanic that turns on when 2 or more non-land permanents ETB. So, for example, if you have that Celebration going here with the Ash, whenever it attacks, you can put a counter on it, which is very, very good, honestly. So, 2/2 haste for 2 is already fine, and then this thing, if you can trigger it every turn, will grow every time as well. Just a good limited card. Honestly, this card's got a shot in constructed because the baseline of a 2/2 haste for 2 is certainly reasonable. And if there's a way to go off with Celebration stuff every turn in constructed, this card's definitely good enough. But at its base, really, really good limited card for Boros, and very, very telling what the deck wants to do, which is reasonable. Belluna Grand Squall. This is your Teamer Adventures card. Of course, Teamer Adventures was the one of the best decks in old standard of old Eldraine. Got a lot of cards banned, and now we're seeing it again from a different point of view, where it's not broken. Creature itself is Teamer for a 4/4 trample, so good stats. Permanent spells you have that have an adventure cost. Permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. So the actual permanent itself costs less, not the adventure. Then we see the adventure part of this, which is more expensive in Seek Thrills, which is a 5 mana instant. Mill 7, then put all cards that have an adventure from among them in the milled cards into your hand. So basically, this is 5 mana, draw a few cards at instant speed, and then it's also a good size 4/4 as well that makes your adventure cards cheaper. Kind of a cool, fun adventure, kind of build around card. The question, of course, is, are there enough good adventure cards to field a deck in Standard? Not sure. You know, the adventure cards in this set are not of the quality of Lovestruck Beast and Bonecrusher Giant, which is a very, very good thing, I think. You know, if you want to build an adventure deck in Standard with a card like this, you have to put adventures cards in your deck and make them better with your synergies. You can't rely on pure rate, which is why Lucky Clover got banned. Lucky Clover was the 2-mana artifact that copied all your adventure spells because it was adding synergy to cards that were already the best cards in the format in Bonecrusher Giant and Lovestruck Beast. It didn't need more synergy to be better. That and Innkeeper as well. So, gonna be a little more work this time around, but again, the sizing here is pretty good, and the adventure half is also pretty powerful too. So, we'll see. Stats are there. And then in limited, this card's obviously just great. Well-sized, a lot of card draw. You know, just a pretty good card. Callous Sellsword. This is our first adventure card that has a different color spell on the card. So the Sellsword itself is a 2-mana 2/2. At ETBs, they plus a counter on it for each creature that died under your control this turn. Pretty good effect, obviously. We've seen a million sacrifice decks before. So, like, you know, you start looping your cat oven or whatever else. It could be a 3/3 or a 4/4 pretty easily. Then we have the adventure side, which is Burn Together, which is a sorcery that's effectively Fling. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target, then sacrifice it. The good news here is that unlike Fling, the sacrifice is not part of the cost. The spell has to resolve. Therefore, if they counter it or whatever, or they remove their creature, you get to keep your creature, which is kind of cool. The downside is because it's not part of the cost, they can kill the creature before it does the damage. So there's upside and downside here. For the most part, this is a Fling. One mana for a Fling. You can Fling a thing, play your Sellsword, it's bigger, obviously. Is Fling useful in Standard? Not sure. Being able to go face is very important, though. And the creature does damage, too, so if it has lifelink or death touch, etc., it gets the ability as well. Card's pretty good. Card's pretty good on both sides. This is a card that you can definitely see playing constructed if that is a possible, you know, there's a deck for it or whatever. And obviously a great limited card, too. So, it's a good one. Callous Sellsword. A lot of power in these multicolor adventure cards, so definitely pay attention to these. Next up is Cruel Somnophage, mana for a Nightmare, and is a power and darkness equal to the number of cards in all creature cards in all graveyards. This is the best version of this card we've ever seen. We've seen the Worm that counts your own graveyard. We've seen Necro whatever Plasma, whatever the hell it's called, that counts other graveyards for 3. We've seen the Tarmogoyf that counts your graveyard as well. This one counts both graveyards, which is pretty sweet. And then it's only 2 mana, pretty easy, pretty cheap and easy to cast. And then there's also the adventure side here, which is Can't Wake Up. 2 mana for a sorcery, target player mills 4 cards. So you could mill yourself. You could mill them too, honestly. So if they're playing like an all creature deck, you could just mill them. But you're probably milling yourself here to kind of do some graveyard stuff. But either way is reasonable. And that's pretty good, honestly. You know, similar to Urborg Lurgoyf, and honestly plays well together with it. It's obviously a legal card in the format as well. So kind of doing a big cool graveyard thing here, which is kind of sweet. That's definitely a playable card in Standard if that deck shakes out. Great card in Limited. It's going to be freaking huge in Limited, which is cool too. So, card's really good. Like this card a lot. I would be very, very likely to see this card in 10 New Brews, which is going to be happening on Thursday. That's right. Don't miss it. 10 New Brews on Thursday. Yeah. But yeah, card's super cool. Like it a lot. Great Limited card. Not even though it says mill, it's not really a mill card. This is more of a self-mill graveyard synergy card. Decadent Dragon is next. And this card is... I almost wanted to give this a trap card, but I wasn't brave enough to. This card looks very good. So we have a 4/4 dragon for 4, flying and trample, attack and make a treasure. That's fine. We're pretty past the point of like a 4/4 flyer for 4 being exciting, and making a treasure of your 4/4 flying dragon is not the most exciting thing ever. And then trample is also, it's fine, you know. We have Expensive Taste as the adventure, and this is one of the more unlikely adventure cards in the set where it does curve well. 3 mana for an instant. Exile top 2 cards of opponent's library face down. You may look at those cards and play them for as long as they're exiled. It's important to note that this does not have the caveat of being able to spend mana of any color. So, if they're a blue-white deck, you will not be able to cast these cards unless you start making treasure with the dragon, which is not always an easy thing to do. So, while this card would be really, really good in mirrors and stuff like that, I think it's a good mid-range kind of mirror card. The Expensive Taste is going to be hit or miss a lot of the time. You can play lands, but it's only 2 cards. If you keep doing this over and over again, sure. And it is valuable for playing Rakdos, and everyone's playing black, because obviously you can cast all your spells, but not as good as it looks, all right? And again, the 4/4 part of this is, it's just not that good. There's like a dozen 4/4 flyers for 4 in Standard, and none of them see play, with all varying upsides. So this might be more of like a sideboard card for like mid-range mirrors when you know you're playing the same colors. But I think this card's just a lot worse than it looks. I did cube over the weekend with my cube a number of times. Kind of had like a little vacation. I did proxy this card and put it in, and it was never cast once. It just was never good enough, never looked good enough. So I think this card is a bit of a bust. Not a complete bust, but this card is not even close to Goldspan Dragon or a lot of other possible cards like that. Again, mostly a tool for mirror matches and so on and so forth. But overall, I think you should temper expectations on this card. Not willing to call it a trap card. It is not that bad, but I think it's definitely worse than people think. Obviously, insane and limited though, because of 4 for flyer 4 is great and limited. Devouring Sugar Bomb, more sugar cards. We get the joke. It's more food stuff. It's gummy worms, yay! Format for a 6/6. I think there's another black format card in the format that might be a little better than this. Menace Trample for a 6/6. Many of your upkeep may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token if you don't tap this. This card's pretty sketch, honestly. So 6/6 Trample for 4, honestly, isn't even that exciting without a drawback. And with a drawback, pretty sad. We do have the adventure here, which is white. It makes a 1/1 token and a food token. So that is enough to sustain it for a little bit at least. But all in all, every deck in the format's ready to kill Shieldred, and everything that kills Shieldred kills this. So that's not very exciting for Constructed. The white side obviously turns on Celebration, which is kind of cool, but a 1/1 and a food for 2 mana is not very exciting either. So I just don't really see a home for this card in Constructed. Not that exciting. If you only want to use the white side, sure, but like it's already erased the alarm in Standard anyway. So for Constructed, I think this card is not good enough. However, in limited, this card's excellent. Obviously, if you're able to use both sides of it, it's very, very good. Sizing is great, and the effects are great. Good card advantage card. Constructed, we'll see. If somehow the format warps in a way where it's shielded versus a bunch of 5 damage spells, and the 6/6 body is like really relevant, maybe. But overall, this card's kind of Elusive Otter. Cool one. 1 mana for a 1/1 prowess. Creatures with power less than this can't block it. Pretty cool, honestly. We don't see a lot of prowess creatures outside of red, which is kind of cool for 1 mana. Has the adventure Grove's Bounty, which is a green and X sorcery. Distributes X plus opposing counters among any number of creatures you control, which is pretty cool, honestly. So this card plays really, really well with Rot Priest, the 1 mana poison card that gets a poison counter for everything you target. You target all your stuff, which is kind of cool. This card's sweet. I don't know exactly where this card goes, but as far as like pure rate goes, there's good things happening here, and there are cards in the format that care about the things this card is doing. As you mentioned, Rot Priest. There's also Ivy, which is pretty cool as well. And just a cool card. I like this card. I don't know what it does exactly, but I like it a lot. Definitely a playable Constructed card. And then in limited, this card's honestly a little worse, I think. But in limited, the adventure is a lot better than the creature itself. But the adventure is pretty good too. So cool card. Like it in both formats. Just cool. Witch number 2. Ariat of a Charmed Apple. This is an Orzhov 3 mana 2/4. Each creature that is enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life for X the number of auras you control. Another commander build around, where the goal of this card is to put auras on your opponent's creatures, and then they can't attack you or whatever, and then you get to drain them out while they sit there with all their cards that can't do anything. Very odd card, because most auras you would put on your opponent's creatures are like pacifisms, which make them not able to attack anyway. So, weird card, honestly. Pretty strange card. Not really the kind of card that would see much play in Constructed, because realistically, trying to sit behind this thing and like drain your opponent out with auras is really, really messy. You can use the negative roll card, your opponent's stuff, I guess, sure. But for Constructed play, this card's just a little too finicky, a little too build-aroundy. However, in Limited, This card is really, really cool. In limited, we get to see, rolls and so on and so forth, and good body, reasonable, cool card for limited. But constructed, not really feeling it. Just a commander card for the most part. Fawn's Bane Troll.
Oh my god, Becky.
4-mana Golgari for a 4/4. Effectively a 5/5. When it ETBs, you make a monster roll attached to it. It is a trigger, so they can deal 4 damage to it and kill it in response, but sure. Then we have 1 mana, sack an aura attached to this thing to make it fight a creature you don't control. That creature would die, exile it, and then activate only as a sorcery. So, this card is a pretty big bummer for Constructed because it looks pretty cool, but it matches up very poorly against Shieldred. It's in Shieldred's colors, and then it just like isn't quite there. Is it cool? Absolutely. If this is a mono green card, we would be all about it because it would be giving removal to mono green in a very unique way. But because it's black, where you have Go for the Throat, other stuff as well, you don't really need that fight effect as much as you would just a good kill spell. So I think this card being not mono green kind of damns it a little bit for Constructed. Is it playable? I mean, maybe. A 5/5 trample for 4 is okay, but it's not the most exciting thing ever, honestly. So it's In limited, however, this card's a slam dunk bomb. I mean, in limited, the idea of like putting auras on this over and over again and sacking them over and over again is very, very real. And this card is going to muck some people up. So, yeah, great limited card. A little short on Constructed. It looks really cool for Constructed, but it's just not really the right card for this format, unfortunately. Frogging Familiar. The otters will continue until morale improves. 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer. Whenever you cast instant sorcery spell, it gets +1/+1. So pseudo prowess. Not sure why I just didn't give prowess. And the adventure half is Blow Off Steam. 1 red instant, deal 1 damage to any target. This is obviously a great limited card. 2/2 flyer with upside and value with this Blow Off Steam. As far as Constructed goes, the 2/2 flyer over 3 isn't really good enough. 1 mana is not quite Bonecrusher Giant, obviously. 1 damage. So not really there in Constructed, but great limited card. I guess if like there's some sort of prowess deck that also, and the format gets really, really overrun by 1 toughness creatures, sure, maybe, but not really, Gingerbread Hunter. Oh my, what a limited card. 5 mana for a 5/5, ETB make a food. And the adventure part is 3 mana for a Disfigure. This is like everything you want in a limited card. Card advantage, removal, big threat, just like phenomenal. Nothing else to say here. Very simple card. Big Idiot, food token, removal spell, 2 for 1. That's it. So, Constructed, no. Limited, yeah, it's a monster. Greta, Sweet Tooth Scourge. More candy things, yay. Golgari, 3/3 for 3. Good stats. This is the Golgari Signpost Uncommon. EDB, make a food. Pay 1 green, sack a food to put a counter on a creature as a sorcery, so not a trick in combat. Pay 2, sack a food, draw a card, lose life. This card is very, very good. Well-sized, makes a food, draws cards, can pump up a little bit if necessary, but for the most part, this card is just an unbelievably good limited card. Constructed, if there's like some kind of food deck, that like really comes together, I mean, maybe, but probably not. But for limited, this card's absolutely bonkers. Huge draw to being the Golgari archetype. Heartflame Duelist, not quite Bonecrusher Giant. So we see here what they've wanted to do with the adventure cards in the set to make it so they don't get cast on curve. So we have Heartflame Slash here, which is a 3-mana lightning bolt. And then we have a 2-drop on the adventure side. So you can't go slash and 2-drop on curve. This card's pretty mopey. 2 mana for a 3/1 that gives all your instants and sorcery spells lifelink is pretty meh. Not really a great effect to have unless you're doing other things too. And then the lightning bolt part is very, very clunky. This card's playable. It's not unplayable or anything like that. It's okay, but not very exciting. It is a knight. It's a 3/2 or has first strike or some other stat maybe, but as it stands, it's not very exciting. Limited, phenomenal. Obviously, bolt plus 3/1 is great and limited, but for Constructed, not quite there. Elsa, of the Icy Crown. 4 mana for a 3/4 human warlock. This is obviously, showing what the blue-white decks want to do in this format. They're the ice decks. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay 1. When you do, make a 4/4, put a counter on all your creatures, or scry to even draw. This card is pretty insane and limited. Really exemplifies everything that the blue-white colors wants to do in limited as far as tapping things. Another build around commander card in that, like, inherently by itself doesn't really do anything because it can't tap things by itself. But with the effects, you build your deck around, it can be very, very good. Yeah, great limited card. Constructed card, probably not, because tapping creatures is not very, very important. But yeah, great limited card, kind of weird mythic. Is what it is. Eldraine's Recruiter. The mana for a 2/2. When it ETBs, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste on a turn, which is very powerful. So this is a 3/2 haste by itself, and pumps the squad. And it has Trained Troops as the adventure, which makes 2/2 Knight Vigilance tokens, which is excellent. Really good limited card. Make the creatures untap, adventure it, card advantage, power. Can cast it on 3 if you need to. Another excellent limited card for sure. Constructed, not really. It does give all your creatures haste, so it could, in theory, like, be part of some combo chain or whatever. But all in all, Johan, Apprentice Sorcerer. Is it 4 mana 2/5? Big booty. That's a small dude for a big booty. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Once each turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery card on top of your library. Also, Signpost Uncommon for the Is It Spells deck. Obviously, insanely good in that deck in limited. If your deck's got 13 spells in it, you have this card. It's going to be really, really good. And then, of course, really good defensive card. 5 times is a lot. A lot of glute workouts for sure. Great limited card. Not constructed. You get the idea. Callan the Fae-Blooded. This is the face card of a set. The main character. The mana for a 2/2 Double Strike. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each aura and equipment on Callan Fae-Blooded. 2 mana for a white sorcery to search your library for an aura equipment card. Reveal it, put it here in the shuffle. We've seen the Boros equipment cards 1,000 times already. They're not good. They don't usually end up good. This card's fine on rate. 2 mana tutor for a thing, and then a double strike over 3 is fine. I doubt there would be a playable constructed deck around this card. It's obviously busted and limited, because just like 2/2 double strike for 3 with upside is obviously very, very good. But yeah, don't think this card is really it for the most part. Yeah, I mean, double strike's good and all, but it would need a lot of work to be reasonable. I don't know, maybe. It's possible, but it's just not really a thing. Likeness Looter is a Dimir rare flying fairy. It's a 1/1 looter for 2, And you can also pay X, and it becomes a copy of a creature card in your graveyard, not any graveyard. Mana value X. Except it has flying, invisibility, is only as a sorcery. Not great. Merfolk Looter is much worse now than it used to be. Back in the day, mana flooding was a huge concern. Now you never run out of things to do with your mana, so looters aren't nearly as good. So 1/1 flyer, hard to cast, looter for 1, not great. And then you can just pay some mana and make it into a good creature, but you could just play a good creature, Kind of cute, Croxa and Uro or whatever. Not that Uro's legal anywhere, as far as you can make it into something or a Phyrexian Dreadnought or something like that. Sure, it's kind of cool, but for the most part, card's pretty unexciting overall. A lot of hoops jump through for not a lot of gain. Just a very slow, clunky card. In limited, sure, it's great. Great limited card, obviously. Very slow, but just powerful, reasonable. It's good. Mosswood Dread Knight. Best in show. If there's a card that helps green out in standard, this is it. Honestly, between this and Glissa, green can end up being one of the complementary colors to black. 2 mana for a 3/2 trample. Whenever it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. The adventure is Dread Whispers. 2 mana for a sorcery. Draw a card and lose a life. This card is a card advantage machine. So we can adventure it. Just adventure it, draw a card with life. And then we get to, untap and cast it. It's 3/2. Play as a 3/2. And it dies, comes back. Really, really good, consistent card draw engine. I think it is going to play a little bit awkward in that it does force you to cast the card when you might not want to. Otherwise, you lose if you get it back. But definitely, somewhat underdog adjacent. The kind of card you might not activate all the time. But the rate stats are good enough by itself. And then if you just ever recur it once or twice, it's insane also. Really good in the late game. Just a good card. Just a really, really solid card, honestly. Not much to say. Phenomenal Unlimited, obviously, is great. And then it is until the end of your next turn. So you have a lot of time to cast the card, Whispers. Good early, great late. This card's excellent. Just really, really good. Great limited card, too, obviously. But yeah, looking forward to playing this card constructed. And should be sweet. Up next is Neva. Stalked by Nightmares. This is the Orzhov signpost uncommon. 4 mana for a 2/2 with Menace. When it ETBs, return a creature card or enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. To your hand. I keep saying battlefield, I'm sorry. So it's just Gravedigger. Whenever enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, to put a counter on it, and then scry 1. So, of course, Black-White's all about bargaining and stacking away your enchantments for value. And this card gets to get them back. Card advantage, it's a threat, it grows, it's menace, does everything, honestly. A little slow, a little clunky, but for the most part, this is a really good limited card, and a card you want to build around. Obraya, Dreaming Duelist. This is the Dimir signpost uncommon. We have 2 mana for a Dimir 2/2 Flying Flash, so already good stats. And for a Fairy ETBs, each opponent loses 1 life. Card's great. Constructed playable, maybe if it's a good Fairy deck. As like a 2-of maybe. Phenomenal limited card, obviously. Plays really well with the mana leak in the Fairy deck, which is awesome too. Just good. Just a good card. I don't know what else to tell you. Also good Bitter Blossom, that's true. Picnic Ruiner, Goblin Rogue, 2 mana for a 2/2. Whenever it attacks while you control creature power 4 or greater, it gains double strike on a turn. Pretty cool. And then it has the adventure side of Stolen Goodies. 2 mana for a sorcery. Distribute 3+1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. That means you can put 3 on 1 creature or 1 on 3 creatures, right? Great draft card. It's got 2-drop with upside, which is great. 4 mana for a pretty good effect. And then, of course, card advantage as well. Just a really, really good 2-drop. Yeah, limited. That's it. It's good. Pollen Shield Hair. We have a rare 2 mana Lord for creature tokens, which is kind of cool, actually. We don't see this very often. And then also has the adventure side of Hair Raising, which is a green sorcery. Creature you control gains vigilance and +X on a turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Pretty good card, honestly. The Lord effect. I'm not a big fan of Lords in general, but the fact that the Hair Raising is pretty good, honestly. Say you have 4 guys in play, +4 vigilance is pretty great. I think to play this thing afterwards is great also. You got to be a green-white go-wide deck, which is not necessarily exactly where you want to be, so this card might not find a home. But cool card for sure. There are obviously a lot of good token things happening in the format, and this card does a decent job there. Yeah, great limited card, obviously, too. The problem, of course, is also that I feel like the token deck wants to be mono-white or black-white. So the green... You might end up playing this card and not even playing the adventure part, which is a thing. But, yeah, card's fine. Awkward. Needs to find a home, but fine. Great limited card. Questing Druid.
It's a trap!
Is my trap card. Questing Druid is Quirion Dryad and Reckless Impulse, sort of. 2 mana for a 1/1 human druid. Whenever you cast a spell, it's white, blue, black, or red. Put a +1/+1 counter on Questing Druid. That's literally just the text from Quirion Dryad. Quirion Dryad used to be the Stone Cold Nut back in the day, for those who don't know. Not anymore. Not anymore. The adventure card here is Seek the Beast. 2 mana for an instant adventure. Exile top 2 cards of your library. Till your next end step, you may play those cards. Now, note, this is not Reckless Impulse. This is not until the end of your next turn. This is until the end of this current turn, making this much, much worse than Reckless Impulse. All right? It is an instant. You can cast it on the end of their turn, but very, very finicky as far as casting-wise. And then you want to cast the spell first, and then when you cast the Druid later, now you have a 1/1, which is pretty awkward. because you've already cast a lot of your spells anyway, and that's rough. Reckless Impulse is the kind of card you want to cast on your turn 3 or turn 4. Having to wait till their turn to Seek the Beast when there already are 8 Reckless Impulses in the format is pretty sketch. The creature itself isn't great, and there also isn't a lot of reason to be a red-green, exiling adventure deck or whatever, because, you think of Pia when you cast a card like this, so I think this card is almost unplayable, despite looking really cool, despite me loving Quirion Dryad. I think this card is very, 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 very unexciting. Quirion Dryad was reprinted like 10 years ago. It wasn't even good enough then. So, not a very exciting card. I think this card is going to play much, much worse than it looks. And yeah, not very exciting. Limited, it's fine. Obviously, end step this limited on turn 5 or 6. Get 2 cards. Great. That's pretty awesome. Then you cast the Druid. And grow it once, twice. Sure. But constructed, this card's a big whiff for me. Which is sad. Moving on to Rowan, Scion of War. So Will and Rowan, formerly planeswalkers that had shared the same spark, have now been separated. Lost their spark, separated. Rowan, Scion of War is Rowan's half of it, obviously, is a Rakdos 4/2 with Menace. Tap it. Spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast for X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Another really weird, commander-y card, right? Doesn't do anything by itself. Making yourself lose life is not the most difficult thing to do. With, dual lands and pain lands and yada, yada, yada. The problem is that you have to, have this 4/2 Menace, untap with it safely, then not attack with it and just tap it, and then also lose life, and then also have a card you want to cast. It's a lot of hoops, folks. This is a commander card and not much else. Is what it is. In limited, sure, a 4/2 Menace for 3 is just fine by itself anyway. So, but yeah, not a very exciting card. Takes a lot. Takes a lot. And in the formats where you're playing fetch lands and dual lands and stuff like that, you can't play a 4/2, hope it lives, untap, and then hope to be able to use it too. So, pretty bad card, all in all. Not the most exciting. Ruby Daring Tracker. We got a Gruul 2-drop. Bard class. Once you haste for 2, whenever it attacks while you control creature power 4 or greater, it's +2/+2 on the turn, which is pretty good, actually. And then we've got a mana creature adds a red or green. Mana creatures with haste are pretty awesome, because you can go, turn 2 Ruby, tap for red, play with fire or creature immediately, which is a great tempo swing, which is nice. Obviously, this card needs to have a deck that it will want to go in. Will that deck exist? Being red-green in the shoulder form is kind of rough, but the stats are here. This card's pretty good, I think, overall. Could definitely see playing constructed. Obviously, very good Bard class, too, but without Bard class, still a reasonable card. And in limited, obviously a very good card as well. Just a good mana creature, as well as it gets bigger later. Card's good. Card's fine. Solid role player. We'll see how it plays out. Scalding Viper, it's mana for a 2/1. Whenever opponent casts a spell, mana value 3 or less, they take 1. It's kind of like a bad Eidolon. And then the blue adventure is Steam Clean, 2 mana for a sorcery that returns an online permanent to its owner's hands. We have kind of like the bastard child here of Brazen Borrower and Eidolon of the Great Revel. Problem, of course, here is that a 2/1 with no combat abilities for 2 is, not exciting. So it's okay. You can bounce your own stuff, which Brazen Borrower cannot do, which is a slight upgrade. But for the most part, this card is just okay. Definitely kind of cool if your opponent's playing spells. You can ding them for 1 or 2, but not the most exciting card of all time. In limited, this card's totally fine. Just, bounce spell +2/1 is totally great. But for constructed, I'm just not really seeing what standard deck would want this card. It's also a sorcery too. So it's sorcery bounce is much much worse. Yeah, that's much worse. Never mind. Share of Numbing Depths. This is the blue-white signpost uncommon. 2/3. When it ETBs, tap something and stun it. Whenever you tap one or more untapped creatures your opponent controls, draw a card only once a turn. Obviously bonkers. Just a bonkers limited card. By itself, it ETBs, taps, stuns, and draws for 4 mana, which is insane. And then it only scales up from there. So Great way to start your blue-white draft deck. This is the card you want in your blue-white draft deck, obviously. Bonkers limited card. Unplayable constructed. Shrouded Shepherd, to mana for a 2/2. When ETBs, give a creature +2/+2 on a turn. And then has the Black Adventure of Cleave Shadows, 2 mana for a sorcery. Creatures of your opponent's control get -1/-1 until end of turn. This is a really good card. Very, very good sideboard card. Obviously limited as far as colors. It's kind of hard to play because you need to be black and white and so on and so forth. But this card is just good. Just good body, good effect on the sideboard, effect or whatever. Spirit. Great limited card. Black Breath plus good 2-drop is great. Just a good card, honestly. Spellscorn Coven. 4 mana for a 2/3 flyer. When it ETBs, each opponent discards a card, so kind of a Ravenous Rat, which is fine. And then has the instant side of Take It Back, which is a 3 mana instant that returns a spell to its owner's hands. A little kind of remand action. Fine card in limited. The discard here is very powerful. Might catch their last card in hand, which is pretty cool. The body's not great, but I think both halves of this make it more than some of its parts. Fine limited card. Sir Armand the Redeemer. This is the Selesnya signpost uncommon. We have a 5 mana 4/4. When ETBs, make a monster roll token and put it on another creature you control, not this. Enchanted creatures you control get +1/+1. So obviously the green-white draft deck is all about auras and putting rolls on creatures. This card does that very, very well. 4/4 extra stats and a lord, pretty good. So good build around for your draft deck for green-white. Not playable constructed. Talion the Kindly Lord. This is a 4 mana 3/4 flyer. When it ETBs, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, they lose 2 and you draw a card. If this card costs 2 or 3, this card would be excellent. But at 4 mana, this card doesn't really set up. You have this card that your opponent's already cast a bunch of cards at this point, and they can kind of ignore it or work around it, yada, yada, yada. And that being said, it just doesn't really do enough, And once again, I keep saying shielded over and over again, but this is a black 4-drop, and every black 4-drop needs to be compared to this card, to shielded. But overall, yeah, just not really great. I'm sorry, between 1 and 10. You choose 2 to 9. But yeah, so overall, this is obviously a busted limited card because if you ever draw one card off it, it's great. As far as constructed goes, I don't think this card makes it. I think the fairy deck is more interested in being a spell-based deck with counter spells and stuff like that. And this card doesn't really get the job done. So, yeah. Great limited card, though. You can just choose 1 or 10. I apologize. Tempest Heart. 4 mana for a 3/4 trample. Whenever you cast spell mana value 5 or greater, put a counter on this. Pretty good. And then scan the clouds, draw 2, discard 2. Draw 2, discard 2 is pretty damn bad. Just card disadvantage, Faithless Looting is great, but not for 2 mana, and not in blue, and not in colors that don't do graveyard stuff. So overall, this card's a fine limited card as far as the backside goes, just being a creature that can do stuff. And then late in the game, if you're flooded, you can discard some lands too, but just an okay limited card. It's fine. The Apprentice's Folly. Is it 4 mana saga? Chapter 1 and 2. Choose target non-token creature you control. Doesn't have the same name as a token you control. Create a token that's a copy of it, except if it isn't legendary. Except it isn't legendary. Is a reflection and has haste. And then on chapter 3, you sacrifice all your reflections. So this card, yeah, it's a lot to read. I almost zoned out when I was reading it there. I'm not gonna lie. Basically, this thing allows you to make copies of things you already haven't copied temporarily for 2 turns. Now, of course, the big shtick here is that if you can sacrifice the enchantment before chapter 3, you get to keep them. So that is a very, very powerful effect. The problem is, this is not really a constructed level effect. You also only get to copy your own things, too. So, good limited card as far as bargaining and just getting the value. Constructed, not so much. But yeah, just a weird, fun build around. The Goose Mother. Choosing violence, honking it up. This is not quite Hydro Crisis. But this card's pretty good. So we have a sleeper card here. Blue-green X. The base stats here are 2/2 flyer. So you could cast this for 2 if you wanted to. But it ETBs X plus the most encounters on it. And then it ETBs with half X food tokens rounded up. So, for 3 mana, this is a 3/3 flyer that makes a food. And whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a food to draw a card. That's pretty good just like by itself. You know, without anything else going on, that's not bad at all. And its scale obviously scales up pretty well. It's pretty well sized, blocks pretty well. Obviously a Stone Cold House in Limited. But for Constructed, if there's a deck that cares about this, that's pretty good, honestly. You know, now you have a 4-mana 4/4 flyer, a 5-mana 5/5 flyer, etc., etc. We're making multiple foods, and then possibly drawing cards also. So, not quite similar to Hydro Crisis, because Crisis is a very, very different card. Crisis is more of a ramp card, more of a top-end card, gain some life. But as far as just, like, making food and attacking and being a reasonably sized creature, this card's not bad. It's not bad at all. I can definitely see this card seeing play. Again, I think the best spot for this card on the curve is at 3 mana. 3 mana, 3/3 flyer, make a food, possibly draw a card next turn is pretty sweet. This is not a big card. You don't need to sink a bunch of mana in this card. I think this card is much better at 2, 3, and 4 mana than it is at 6 mana. But can do that also, which is cool. So, I like this card a lot. It's my sleeper for Reset, for Constructed. Obviously, just stupid, dummy, thick, limited card. Threadbind Click. 3 mana for a 3/3 flyer. Great and limited. 3 mana for a white instant on the adventure. Short target tap creature. Phenomenal limited card. Both halves here are great limited cards. Put them together and you've got, you know, a curve up Bonecrusher situation. Phenomenal limited card. Unplayable Constructed. The Swarm Piper. The Rat King. Not a rat king. The king of the rats. Not a rat that is a king, but a king that is the leader of the rats.
Waka waka.
Rakdos, 3 mana, 2/3. Whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, make a rat. 2 mana to give a rat Death Touch. So, this is the build around Signpost Uncommon for Rakdos in Limited. This card's pretty good. Not on the level of some of the other Signpost Uncommons. 2/3, okay stats. Make a rat or 2, and then of course giving rats Death Touch is pretty good because you can just tackle your rats. They can't really block, and you use your mana elsewhere. But not like, knock down, drag out, insane card or whatever. Just a good card, pretty solid card. Constructed, no, but Troyan Gutsy Explorer. Somehow there's a Videlkin on this plane. Apparently there's like portals or something like that. I don't know how it works. Again, I'm not the Vorthos for you. But this is the blue-green Signpost Uncommon. It is a 1/3 for 3. It taps to add a blue and a green, but only for spells that cost 5 mana or greater or X spells. And they can also pay a blue and loot. I love cards like this, because I love playing big things in Limited. The last few haven't worked very well, though. So, I think this card's still pretty good, though. We'll see. The blue-green archetype of, like, big idiots, doesn't tend to flesh out super well, but we'll see how it plays. If you are casting, 6 drops on turn 4 with this, it is pretty damn good. So we'll see how some plays out. But pretty cool limited card. Constructed, obviously not. But I'm looking forward to trying out the blue-green big idiot deck. Twinning Twins. 4 mana for a 4/4 flying vigilance ward 1. As I said, there are a lot of 4/4 flyers in the format. Vigilance in ward 1 is pretty good, though. And then it has Swift Spiral, which is 2 mana adventure side in white. Which exiles target non-token creature. Return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the next end step. So, blink your own things, as well as well-sized Sarah Angel. It is Wandering Ember proof, which is very, very nice. The ward 1 is okay. An inconvenience at best, but still reasonable stats. Blinking is kind of cool. All in all, though, I just don't think this really makes it Constructed. But Limited, this is a slam dunk, insanely good card. But Constructed, we'll see. You can target your opponent's things and they'll be gone for a small part of the turn. But yeah, just not quite there for Constructed, probably. Will, the other half of the Will and Rowan duo, and Will is just a mirror copy of Rowan, just in the opposite direction. Azorius, 2/4, Vigilance. Spells you cast this turn that are white or blue cost X to cast. X amount of life you gain this turn. Same exact thing. Makes more sense, at least, as a tap ability creature, because it's not a freaking 4-2 you want to attack with Menace. So as Vigilance, you can like attack with it and then use the ability. If there are ways to gain life, you can now ritual up and cast spells, I suppose. But again, this card seems much more doable and constructed than Rowan does. But still, it doesn't really seem worth the squeeze beyond like Commander or whatever. And then in Limited, cost reduction just isn't really that important in Limited. You know, like you gain some life and you cost reduce, I guess. But yeah, definitely. This one definitely has more of a chance to be constructed, but not the most exciting card there either. Woodland Acolyte. 2 mana for a 2/2, draw a card. It's okay in Limited. And then the green adventure card is Mend the Wild. It's an instant. Put a permanent card from your graveyard top of your library. Not the most exciting. Obviously cute together. This can be like a 4 mana Eternal Witness. But all in all, this is just an okay Limited card. Nothing too exciting. Yenna Redtooth Regent is a Selesnya 4 mana 4/4. Elf Noble. You pay 2. Choose an enchantment you control. It doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. If a token is an aura, untap this, then scry 2. Activate it only as a sorcery. So really, really weird, like aura copy 4/4. Another card that just like, it's just a really weird build around legend that just doesn't seem particularly useful in Standard. There's other better enchantment cards. Have fun playing Commander. Very good Limited cards. You can just copy your auras. But yeah, sure. That's it for Multicolor. Thank God my throat's about to die. Best in Show recap is Mosswood Dreadnought. Sleeper card, the Goose Mother. And Questing Druid is our trap card. No Bombin Common because there are no commons in Multicolor. Colorless and lands coming up next. You two folks like, please. Don't go nowhere.